who on earth doesn't want more power in their car? And today I'm making the first power modifications to my GR Yaris Project Car with this, the DTUK piggyback box. This should get us a chunk more power, and keep watching to see how it's fitted. I'm going to be pairing this box with the which should get us well over the 300 brake horsepower mark, and these cars are 260 standard, so that is a huge increase. At the end you'll see the dyno sheets, the comparison in torque curves, and we'll let you know what setting we're opting for. Now there are lots of different settings, all with different trends, so low end, top end, so I'm going to compare what I want the car to feel like, and then we'll decide on an option for future track days and test out which is the fastest. This is the DTUK Stage 2 ECU piggyback box. Now that's quite a long name, and the reasons for that are as such. Stage 2 is because we've got this beautiful intake and an exhaust system, which you'll hear more about later on, so wait until you see that. And it's a piggyback box because we're not changing the ECU, which is here, as a whole. We're piggybacking onto it, so we're going to be disconnecting some of the cables in the engine bay. That'll be flow sensors, air pressure sensors, fuel sensors, and then replacing them with this box, so sort of tricking the system a bit. This is what's included. It's an incredibly simple system, so we're going to be fitting it ourselves. We have the main unit here, so this is the processor unit, and you can choose your options on the top, and I'll get onto that later. And then this is just a blanking plate if you don't want to run the system. And then this is our coil of cables. So we'll be connecting down the engine bay here, up into the existing ECU. So this is what we'll have to work out, read the instructions, but it should be fairly plug and play. The guys at DTUK have done a great job, and it's all one plug fits one plug, so it should be quite simple. So let's see how we get on. So this is the main plug. This will go into our main box unit, and I'm going to situate this nice and neat on top of the fuse box, and I'm just going to do that with some 3M dual lock velcro, and I'm going to try and trace the cables under the airbox and keep everything as tidy as possible. So now it's just working out where all of these plugs go into. A very important step one that I nearly forgot before I started unplugging stuff was disconnect the battery, which we both forgot behind the camera. We're both guilty of that because we would have been having fault codes everywhere. So I'm just going to go and do that. Bunch of wallies. So every sensor or change has one cable that goes into it, and one path goes into the existing connector and the other receives the previous cable. I'm trying my best at the moment to plan how these cables are going to sit in the engine bay, so in between which hoses, in between which other cables, but I will not be surprised if I end up having to undo some to neaten it up at the end. That's number 2 done, the 4-pin boost pressure sensor, and that's just before the throttle valve, so it can accurately gauge how much boost to provide. Plug number 3 is this one, and it is a 3-pin camshaft sensor, and it is on top of the cylinder head, so let me just find that. Next up is the airflow meter, and that's just behind the airbox and is this plug here. So we've actually done all the connections in just over 10 minutes, but this is the more complex one. This is the speed limit signal, and this goes into the top of the ECU here, and this is probably going to require some soldering, and we've got to locate pin number 42. So we are going to go through this step, but it's not necessary for everyone to do. I've just neatened up all the cables, making sure to keep it away from any heat sources so it doesn't short, melt, and it's just good practice. So for example, cable A or 1 I've run down and across here, so that's nice and neat, out the way and secure. I've done that with all of them and tried to keep the engine bay as tidy as possible, but of course the priority is looking after and preserving the cables. So now I'm going to do the Speed De-restrictor. So what I've just done is popped the head plug on the right side of the ECU off. This is the stock ECU, as I said, so it's a piggyback system. This is the one that came with it, and then we're going to cut one of the cables in the back and connect these two wires. Now the manual says to solder them, but we've got these lovely connectors called Wagos, and they're really useful, and you just push them in and secure it with this clip, and that is as secure as you're ever going to get, and it's much easier and quicker for us. And I actually think it's the most secure solution because my soldering isn't what it used to be. And then once that's clipped on, bit of shrink wrap, and boom, job's a good one. I'm now doing the terrifying bit of addressing this bundle of wires, of which there are about 60, and I've got to select this brown one in here, if you can see that, and then I'm going to strip it, being very careful not to touch any of these others, because that could, I don't know, it might have no difference, it might have a huge difference, but then I will cut it and use this connector to then spur off onto these wires, which go to the DTUK Stage 2 tuning box. I'm so scared. Right, hopefully that is plenty of room. Okay, the Speed De-restrictor is now wired up, so I've taped up the wires with our connectors there, nice and neat and sealed, and then our wires are traced down here, and there's this small cluster that is about as neat as I can get it, but I'm going to work on that more because there's lots of connectors and V's. The DTUK box I'm going to stick on here with some Velcro, and that's really neat solution, and it can be removed easily if I need to access the fuses. That is secure, and then there's also this delete, which acts as the same port, so the loom can either go into the reprogramming box or this delete. Now, because you're obviously pushing the engine quite far, what I'm going to be doing is on the road and for long journeys, I'm going to run it in this delete, so that puts less strain on the engine and lets it run more naturally, and then get to the track and swap it over. And that's the beauty of this easy piggyback system. So again, I'm just going to whack a bit of Velcro on the bottom of this, place it there, and then all I've got to do, road to track, is swap them over, and it minimises the stress on the engine and just increase the longevity and performance. So I'm reconnecting the battery and hoping for no fault codes, and keep watching because this is only phase 1 of the power upgrades. I will in the next video be dynoing it, but before we even get to the dyno, there's another major power upgrade, and this upgrade will improve the performance even further. I've just turned the ignition on, which allows me to tinker with these settings. Now, the LEDs are currently flashing, which means I can't change it, so the pad is effectively locked. So what I did is to unlock it, you press and hold these, plus and minus, and it comes up with a sequence of flashing lights, and then I've chosen P2 plus 2. P2 is for when you've got your OPF or GPF still fitted, and then plus 2 means plus 2, increase in power, and there's 3 different increases, plus 1, 2 and 3. Every car is different, so plus 1 is not necessarily faster or slower than plus 2 or plus 3, so that's why we'll need to go to the dyno later. But to unlock the modes P1 and P3, that requires an OPF delete. And I think you can guess what's coming up next in the video. With the OPF fitted, we're limited to maybe 290 brake, 300, but then with the OPF deleted, that increases to about 320, and that is our target. I think that's a good amount of power for the car, for the diff, because obviously when you add power, other things have more strain. That's gearboxes, that's differentials particularly getting too hot, and I think about 320 is the sweet spot for reliability and managing temperatures. So that is the target. Keep watching to see the exhaust being fitted. Here we go, the moment of truth, and I am fingers crossed it's going to start. So here we go. Oh, sounds powerful, sounds powerful. At the moment, there are no fault codes and it doesn't even know it's there. Really pleased and most of all, relieved. Here we are then at Prestige Auto Technic for phase 2 of my grand power plan. The garage whiff bits, OPF delete exhaust. At the moment we've got the Miltech non-resonated OPF back exhaust and now we're deleting the OPF. For those of you wondering about the noise, generally track days are say 98 drive-by and 101, 103 static, and this car at Goodwood was tested to be 91 static. The OPF delete will probably add 6 or 7 decibels, which means we're still well within the range at say 97, 98 decibels, which for static is fine, under 100 is fine, because this is meant to be the ultimate track day car, and it's not going to be that good on a track day if you're not even allowed on the track. So we've accounted for that, we've thought about it, and this should be the best way to maximise the power without having silly engine noise that's actually manageable on a track day. Underneath the car now you can see the OPF that we want to remove. So here backwards, this is the rear of the car, is the Miltech OPF back non-resonated exhaust. That comes all the way down here to this connection point, which is where we will be going onto, and then this pipe without this, so it's completely straight, one unit, then bends up there towards the downpipe off the engine, and that'll all be one smooth pipe. Hangers, 2 bolts at each end, and 1 sensor up in there, and that should be it. So the bracket for the oxygen sensor is now off. So I can now unlock the DTUK panel with that sequence of flashing lights and choose a new mode. So I can now go into P1, which is the most powerful one, and I'm going to go +3. Let's go +2 for now, play it safe. So now we give that a minute for the panel to lock and for it to initialize, and then it will do a flashing light sequence, and we can start the car up again and see if it makes any difference. Oh, okay, the exhaust is doing something pretty wacky then. So I hope you could hear that. It entered a different tone. Whilst the car is much louder now, that was not the primary objective. So subscribe to see the next episode where we put it on the dyno and see if it is actually making any more horses. And please give the video a like if you enjoyed it.